Okay, so let's see. Should we wait till Sarah gets back, or should we just?
Oh no, she's dealing with her.
Oh, she's not gonna.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Alright, so let's see if we can break this process. Yeah, this is for each individual. So I guess I'll just start with the start. Makes sense. It's obvious, but let's see. Okay, so I saw it here, Jay, as the first step was the gathering information on a particular component, right?
Research.
Yeah, yeah.
Or gather information, could be whatever.
Which one makes sense,
Yep.
more sense to you guys? Research,
Gather information.
gather information? Okay.
I always say research when I'm trying to be, put on airs.
Yeah. Research.
Gather info. And we saw that in 3 steps right here, right? And I like these steps. I think they're pretty well defined. We had to establish the knowledge base, the create drawing or diagrams, and the clearly identify the questions. Right? Does anybody have a problem with those 3 processes for a component? No?
Is the okay, the only, it's not a problem, it's just an observation that we have create drawing in 2 places.
Where? Here?
We have one there, and then we were down below under process.
Oh yeah, we'll clean all that up, I think, once we get there.
Okay.
As far as the gathering information, I think.
So the purpose.
Yeah, the process is kind of below it was a reiteration of the purpose, so yeah.
Is it to create a drawing, or is it to create a blueprint? Or something that we're gonna, like...
If this is more general, I think it should be like a diagram, or maybe...
diagram,
There you go.
A visualization,
Yeah,
a visual, something visual,
yeah.
that tangible, that's...
Yeah, but just say tangible outline, and then in parentheses, how about diagram, outline,
Whatever it is.
yeah,
Picture,
picture, whatever.
Picture, whatever we choose, it's open-ended.
tangible outline, or
Yeah.
tangible
Sketch.
sketch.
Yeah, a tangible...
Scribble,
product.
a scribble,
Scribble, doodle.
doodle, create doodle.
A visual might include any of this. A visual.
Yeah,
That's
creative.
why I like visual, because then we can do it.
As long as visual isn't limited to, so for the education program, it's not like we're just going to draw out a picture flow chart of the education program. It's going to be like, all right, let's gather information and data into something usable.
It could be a video.
Right.
I might create a video.
Visual, do you think that makes sense?
A visual, because then
Yes,
it's,
sometimes visual.
or a marketing tool, because it's like, not a market.
Well, I think that would be a different,
It would be different.
That would be
yeah.
different, yeah. This
Yeah.
is-
So what? Maybe we could define the purpose of the visual, because
Yeah.
really,
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the
what I
purpose
like.
of the visual is to explain the idea, right?
someone.
So to anybody, yeah, to
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
Simplify. What we're
it's,
trying to do is take this huge idea and simplify it
right.
into something that anybody can see.
yes,
Create into a visual?
Create what?
Create
Create.
into a visual?
Or maybe just create into a presentation, and we know that could be
that
any.
would be good.
Yeah. How about create into a presentation,
Yeah,
which could
so-
be a
so
document, could be a
under-
visual.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Under visual, it's like A, video,
Yeah,
B,
I don't think we
drawing,
need to do that
C,
yet.
outline.
Yeah,
How about create a visual to illustrate the idea or
to
something like that?
illustrate the
Yeah,
idea,
yeah.
that's
I
it,
like that.
an
I like that.
illustration.
Or we could even just say illustrate the idea.
There you go,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's pretty simple.
that's it, cause that's what we're trying to do.
Is that fairly clear?
Yes,
Okay,
that's
visual to
nice.
illustrate idea.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and then number 3 here is it to clearly identify our questions.
Yeah,
Okay, I apologize if this is annoying. So, would it be all right if everyone we could just say illustrate the idea? And the reason why I say it is the words create visual to illustrate the idea. For me, implies draw a picture, not illustrate the idea, which could be in other ways.
Can I cross this out?
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, that would be good,
Sounds good.
yeah, illustrate the idea,
Illustrate.
More open-ended,
yeah.
Less words.
less words.
Sound good?
Yeah. What happened to the flow chart?
This is one step.
Oh, okay.
This is all one. So I just wanted to get it out there before I threw a box around it.
Yeah.
Squeeze it all in.
Wait, how is that? So how? I guess just because it was 3 steps for me. So I look at like established knowledge. That could be 12-hour block. You know, you might spend 12 hours researching and gathering knowledge. Illustrating the idea could be another 4-hour block.
Yes.
You know, which identifying questions would be tied into all of that. So
Are you identifying the purpose of gathering information
Yes.
with those 3 points?
right.
That's a gather information.
Yeah, so I feel like
With the
this-
purpose to. So gather info with the purpose to
Yeah. So maybe write that up there.
what's
Yeah.
the
It's
purpose
clear
to-
for everybody.
gather info.
Gather info to or
With,
with
the
the purpose
purpose
to.
of establishing knowledge or
Oh, gather info to.
With the
With-
purpose of
with
order
the
to.
purpose with the purpose to
Yeah.
With the purpose to, yeah.
or intent to.
With the intention of,
Yeah.
with the
Intention of or to
Making it difficult to fit in the space.
Sorry.
with idea. Idea is a short word.
In
Well,
order
Goal
gather info in order to.
in
3 words.
order to, there we go.
in order to. There you
There you
go.
go. Perfect, thank you,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Order to, yeah,
Gather info in order to establish knowledge, illustrate the idea, and identify questions.
yes,
Yes, yes.
that's it,
Whoop
I
whoop.
like it.
Yeah.
beautiful.
Everyone on the same page? Anybody confused about this step?
Nope.
It's good.
Okay.
Draw the arrow from this step, this step.
Can you put on top of that page, just for my thing, this is the
Individual components.
individual components
Okay.
page.
Sarah's
Okay,
cereal.
This is the component. Yeah.
What is this called?
This is
This
the
is so going on
process.
YouTube.
I don't know, we haven't
Yeah,
gone
so
over
what
it.
are we
Process
creating?
overview.
Yeah.
That's the project flow.
Project flow,
This is the component flow.
okay, so, let me
Should I write that on?
Also
Yeah.
maybe project organization, so kind of organizing like a giant project into parts,
Yeah.
maybe. Organizing flow.
So I believe that the next step then would be to actually illustrate. So now that you've gathered your information with these intents, then the next step would be illustrate idea, listing questions, still needing information, or it would be to individually research questions.
Yeah, because
Identified.
we already identified the questions here, right?
yeah,
So I think that the next step would be to ask ourselves, are there questions? Maybe there's some things that we would have all the full knowledge of, and we
Yeah.
could just go ahead and put into implementation.
So are you saying that we've also illustrated the idea? Because my understanding is the purpose of that first point is to gather info to do all these things. At some point, when do we illustrate the idea?
there,
Here.
because, yeah. See, this is where I think the purpose and the action are meshed as one, and this is where it gets confusing,
I see. I see.
okay?
So maybe, see, the gather info should maybe just be established knowledge and research.
Maybe,
And then the
oh, good idea.
action items underneath that would be
Yes.
to illustrate the idea, you know,
Yes.
and then after that, identify questions.
That makes sense.
I really want to impress what I believe is the importance of the value of identifying that the reason why you're gathering information is for those 3 purposes. It cuts through a lot of overwhelm and confusion that I think that I see in people and have experienced.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Well, then, you were saying that you wanted to be able to create a visual or something like that afterwards. Now, what was that?
I'm not suggesting anything other than what you guys are suggesting. Just leave that first step as here's our purpose of gathering info. We want to establish knowledge, illustrate an idea, identify questions.
I see.
Now that you've gathered your info, what's the next step?
Okay.
Brian?
I think the next step after that, after you've gathered your information with the intention of establishing knowledge, illustrating the idea, and identifying questions, I believe the next step would be to identify the steps that you're going to take.
Right,
So identify an action plan, an action list.
Or create an action list?
yes,
Sure.
creating.
So like, if I'm gonna be researching humanure toilets, first I need to research what is a humanure toilet. I need to research the pros of humanures, the cons of humanures, and kind of approach it into the detail that way, with the intention of establishing knowledge,
Okay.
illustrating, and then after you've established a solid knowledge foundation, then you can start to say, okay, I understand humanure toilets. Now I'm going to start to illustrate the idea, you know. So kind of like taking those three things and spreading them out so it's very clearly defined.
So steps to take?
Well, yeah, identifying the steps that you're going to take.
Okay.
I like that, and in my mind, I see that as, again, like a little, maybe drop-down boxes
Totally.
that would, yeah, action items, like you said. In order to establish knowledge, what kind of knowledge is what I hear you saying? Like, are we trying to gather? And these are questions you would ask yourself that would help you in researching this knowledge. Does that make sense? So what say what you were saying, like.
So just to build on top of what you just said, in my perception, Julie, so we would say, okay, so our first step is to establish knowledge.
Right.
So underneath establish knowledge,
yeah.
we would say, what kind of knowledge,
What kind of
information are we trying to gather, what kind of knowledge do we need, and then go with that and say, okay, so after we've gathered this information, what are our action items, what's our next step? We need to know.
So you're saying this whole thing is established knowledge? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying the next
Okay, go ahead.
the next step would be to identify, to like spread out those three items, and I think Julie was saying
Yeah.
having like
I'm saying
one
the same thing.
underneath that established knowledge would be like
Can I
So
make a
how does
suggestion
go
based
through
on how
this.
Google Docs work that might help with this? Because you could select that box and you could have a comment that would define that. So the flowchart stays simple, and then it says "see comment," and like over here, it's like, hey, and here's the mini steps of this step.
Sure, totally.
Yeah, because I don't see this as being done, and then you move on to define these things. I see you're defining these things within this step.
Totally.
Right.
You know, so each like
That's
established
it.
knowledge would have its own flowchart out here. It would be like, okay, this is what I need to
Exactly.
do.
So what I was going to say is that there would be three that went underneath this, and then you'd say establish knowledge, illustrate idea, identify question.
Right.
And then you would clearly identify or build onto the details of what exactly does established knowledge mean, and
Yeah.
can we identify the steps that we're going to take to accomplish our task.
I see. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I think each one of these three things is a big thing.
It is.
Right? And it needs a flowchart all on its own, probably.
It does.
You know, but for the purposes of creating a component flow for accomplishing this, I don't think we have enough room on this page for that. So maybe we should just say that you know, each one of these things has description and a flowchart associated with it
Yeah.
that would clearly define how to do these things.
Yes. Can we? Yes.
But that should all be handled in this one step. Like, I don't feel like I should do any more in the flowchart
Okay.
with these things,
Okay.
you know, because it's going to be defined within this step.
It will be. Okay, got it.
Okay, because when you go to gather the information, this just says, okay, step one, I'm gonna gather information. And what is my purpose in gathering information? While I'm gathering the information, what is my focus? To get a knowledge base, find a way to illustrate an idea, and to identify questions. So while I'm gathering information, this is like in the back of my head. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. And the thing is, I think too, the process might be completely different for each one of the items. Like for education, the established knowledge portion would be completely different than the established knowledge portion of the septic system. You know, just from what I understand. I don't really see that as being a defined established knowledge flowchart that would be the same across the board, right? And especially the illustrating the idea, that would be completely different as well. For the septic system, that's going to require physical drawings and getting dimensions and things like that. For the educational system, that might be look more like an outline.
It will, and there's the physical, actual drawings of the classrooms and so forth. Okay.
Yeah. So these steps would be, I think, would be completely different based on what component you're currently tackling.
Okay, that's a possibility. I'm not sure I'm convinced of that, but
Okay.
I'm going to
Okay.
keep it as a possibility.
I'm feeling that the purpose of creating these charts is to break things down, because when you say, well, okay, that's an inherent part of the box, that maybe that would add to the initial feeling of being overwhelmed.
Okay.
So,
I mean,
does that make